Following the destruction of House Atreides by House Harkonnen, Stilgar's Fremen troops, including Paul and his pregnant mother, Lady Jessica, overcome a Harkonnen patrol under the cover of an eclipse. When Jessica and Paul reach Sietch Tabr, Stilgar and others see signs of the prophecy that a mother and son from the outer world will bring prosperity to Arrakis. Stilgar tells Lady Jessica that Sietch Tabr's Reverend Mother is dying, and that Jessica must succeed her by drinking the water of life, a poison fatal for males and untrained women. Jessica transmutes and survives the poison, inheriting the memories of all the past Reverend Mothers. The liquid also prematurely awakens the mind of her unborn daughter, Aaliyah, allowing Jessica to communicate with her. They agree to focus on convincing the more skeptical northern Fremen of the prophecy. Chani and her northern friends believe the prophecy was fabricated to manipulate the Fremen. However, she begins to respect Paul after he declares that he only intends to fight alongside the Fremen, not to rule them. Paul and Chani fall in love as Paul immerses himself in Fremen culture, learning their language, becoming a Fedaykin fighter, riding a sandworm, and raiding against Harkonnen spice operations. Due to the devastating spice raids, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen replaces his nephew Rabban as Arrakis' ruler with his more cunning yet psychotic younger nephew, Feyd-Rautha. Jessica travels south to unite with Fremen fundamentalists who believe in the prophecy. Paul remains in the north, fearful that his visions of a holy war will occur if he goes south. During another raid on a spice harvester, Paul reunites with Gurney Halleck, each having presumed the other dead since their separation. Gurney leads Paul to the hidden atomic stockpile of House Atreides. Feyd-Rautha unleashes a devastating attack on the northern Fremen, including Sietch Tabr, forcing Paul and the survivors to journey south. Upon arrival, Paul drinks the water of life and falls into a coma. This angers Chani, but she is compelled by Jessica to mix her tears with the liquid, which awakens him. Paul now has clairvoyance across space and time. He envisions an adult Aaliyah on a water-filled Arrakis, perceiving a singular path to victory among all possible futures and discovering that Jessica is the Baron's daughter. Paul meets with a southern Fremen war council, galvanizing the crowd by demonstrating his ability to discern their deepest thoughts. He declares himself the Lisan al-Gaib and sends a challenge to Shaddam, who arrives on Arrakis with Irulan and the Sardaukar. Shaddam chastises the Harkonnens for their failures. The Fremen launch an offensive using atomics and sandworms to overpower the Sardaukar. Paul challenges Shaddam for the throne, and to Chani's dismay, demands to marry Irulan. Feyd-Rautha volunteers to be Shaddam's champion, but Paul kills him in a duel. Irulan agrees to Paul's request for marriage on the condition that her father lives. Shaddam reluctantly surrenders, kneeling and kisses Paul's signet ring. When the great houses reject Paul's ascendancy, he orders the Fremen to attack the orbiting fleet. As Stilgar leads the Fremen onto the captured Sardaukar ships, Jessica and Aaliyah reflect on the beginning of Paul's holy war. Chani refuses to bow to Paul and departs alone on a sandworm. I don't have many things to say about Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of things to say about one thing, if that makes sense. There aren't
Sure
like a myriad of topics of which I feel compelled to speak on. I feel compelled to speak on one thing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to say about that one thing.
I feel like a lot of the things we brought up in Dune Part 1 are still relevant to Dune Part 2. And Part 2 is more specifically fulfilling the setup that was presented to us in Part 1.
Yeah.
And so it's all similar stuff. We can just jump into that.
I will say that I like the film version of this second half of the story. Denis Villeneuve's version, I should clarify, the second half, better than the original books. And that is due in part to what Frank Herbert admits was not clear enough in his own novel. I have quotes here from Brian Herbert, his son, and from Denis Villeneuve himself, which I'll read here in a minute. But basically, one of Frank Herbert's greatest frustrations with the original Dune novel was that there were people who seemed not to understand what he was really trying to say with that novel.
I learned why, by the way. I learned why.
Why?
People did not understand. Dune, the first Dune, was released in 2 parts over the course of 2 years, and it was serialized
Oh, yeah.
in small excerpts. It took 2 years for people to realize that the character they were following the entire time was not the good guy.
Yeah.
At 2 years, right? So you're just getting a chapter or two, and then you'll get, like, I don't know, Reader's Digest. I don't know exactly how he did it, but it was serialized, and it was put together. First part was, Dune. I can't remember what it's called. The second one was called The Prophet of Dune, right? But it was these groups of this book that it until you get to the end and until it's like, oh, you don't get what I was doing, that's fine. But people thought they were reading a story about a hero
Yes.
for years before things really came to their conclusion
That's
there.
a
And
good point.
I think that's why this all happened.
That's a good point.
Because
Actually, now that
he
I think
couldn't
about
correct anyone in those early years until the book was done.
Right.
Then it's like, okay, now I can tell you you're all wrong.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of authors from that time, even from not even quite so long ago. I mean, Andrei Sapkowski published many of his short stories in
magazines, yeah,
and things like that before he compiled them into a book.
right.
So, a lot of
That was
these
more common
science fiction authors
then.
were publishing pieces of their stories in a serialized fashion over time. So that is one thing to consider before they, it's all finished and they put it into one volume and release it as a book.
Well, it's almost like if you get to Return of the Jedi and you realize that Luke was actually on a bad guy trajectory this whole time. And people would just not want to believe
They did kind of set that up in movie 2 when he goes into the cave
that he could have
cuts
been,
off Darth Vader's head
and it's
his
him.
own head.
Yeah. But if they actually followed through with it, people wouldn't want to accept it. They'd be like, no, what are you talking about? He was a hero.
Yeah. So anyway, Herbert was frustrated that I don't know what percentage of his readers didn't seem to understand that Paul was not a hero you should respect. It was a cautionary tale about messianic figures, and that no one person should have this much power, even if they were wronged, even if it doesn't seem like they're as bad as the other people in power. Like, just one person should not have this much power, period.
Similar to the Tolkien and the Ring, right?
Yeah.
It's like nobody, you may have the best reason for wielding it in the world, but you got to say no.
Yeah.
It's going to ruin everything.
Right. So I wanted to read a little bit of what Brian Herbert and Denis Villeneuve have said about this. Particularly Villeneuve's quotes here, I think, are really, to me, they illustrate how you do an adaptation where you're going to change certain details of the story.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about, what is the spirit of a work? How do you identify what that spirit is?
Yeah.
And how are you true to that in either remakes of it or adaptations to another media, going from book to film or whatever? How do you get at knowing that this is a different medium or this is a different take on the thing, and it's not going to be exactly the same? How do we capture the most important, essential spirit of that thing?
Right.
We've had a lot of discussions
while changing it. Yeah.
He's about to give the answer to, at least in this circumstance, why, for me, despite the fact that the second film of this 2-part Dune duology is almost nothing like the book. I mean, it's so different that there's only very few key scenes that even happen in the book, and even those are different in so many ways that it almost feels like he tried to be fairly close or accurate to the book in part 1, and then in part 2 it just really is different.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, I think it's truer to Frank Herbert's intent than Frank Herbert's own novel was, if that's even possible.
Yeah, sure.
Which is why I like the film version better.
No.
But what he says here is when Frank Herbert wrote Dune, and when the book came out, he felt that the readers misunderstood him. People saw Dune as a celebration of Paul Atreides, but for him, he wanted the book to be a warning regarding messianic figures. In order to correct that perception, Herbert wrote Dune Messiah, which is almost an epilogue. In my adaptation, before I get into that, I want to say that since we did our last episode on the first part, I've read Dune Messiah. And that is exactly what Dune Messiah feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like he's addressing those who misunderstood the first book. It's crazy how, like, almost immediately he's trying to break down Paul as not being this messianic hero.
Yeah.
He's trying to break your perception of looking at him that way from the moment the first words come off the page almost. The first scene is like a historian who's imprisoned and is being questioned by one of the Fremen priests, basically, whose promises, I will at least tell the truth. I will immortalize or put your words into like the official record, which to a historian is like the ultimate thing you can give them before you execute them, right?
Yeah,
at least,
totally.
at least my words will be preserved.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But essentially, he's just telling these priests, like, Paul is not the guy you think he is. Oh, blasphemy, heresy. Like, okay, fine, you can say all you want, but like, you're freaking wrong. You're freaking wrong about this guy. And he's not talking. It's almost like the character is not talking to the priest. He's talking to you, the reader.
Right. Yeah.
Wait,
That's
how
really
dare
funny.
you say this
Yeah.
about Paul Atreides, my favorite character? How dare you say this? Heresy. No, you don't get it. Herbert is saying through this character to you. No, you don't get it. I get it. I get it, dude.
Yeah.
I know the history. I came up with this stuff. He's not who you think he is. It was amazing how that was like the first thing he did. Right. Okay. In my adaptation, specifically in part 2, I'm trying to be faithful to the book, but more, I'm trying to be faithful to Frank Herbert's wishes and desires.
Yeah, that's big.
So this is how he went about that. Chani, in the second part of the book, kind of disappeared in Paul's shadow. The character becomes less interesting.
Right, yeah.
But I thought there
For
was
sure.
a strong opportunity there to create a character who would give us a new perspective on Paul in order to get closer to Frank Herbert's intentions. It's very important. It's fundamental. Chani is my secret weapon in this adaptation because I wanted to be faithful to Frank Herbert's initial intentions.
So there will be a part 3, it seems,
Yes.
and she's the main character.
I mean, in the way direction
that part
he's
2
going,
ended, she's the main character.
it should be.
Yeah.
Like, I literally have no idea how he's going to adapt
Having read it, yeah.
Dune Messiah. I just literally have no idea.
No.
I have no idea. The book seems unadaptable to me in a
He'll
lot of
just do what he wants, and he'll make it seem like it's
ways.
in that spirit.
Especially
But
with
she's
the
going to kill
direction
him.
that he has taken Chani.
Yeah.
Chani was much more subservient to him.
Oh, very
even
much so.
in Dune Messiah, which was written as this sort of rebuke of the concept.
Yeah, but she had already had a kid, and like, I don't know. It was, she was pretty committed
Yeah.
by that point.
I just wonder, especially with the final shot, the way she just walks out on it all.
This is her story
how
now,
he's
is
gonna
what it's going
to
to
even
be.
get into the same story of Messiah with her being there and his consort.
Hey,
it doesn't seem like she would accept
long as
this
it's
whatsoever
Yeah.
as how the movie. I'm just curious to see how.
Yeah, but he is going to do it. It's what it looks like. I love too the concept of not really respecting the author's wishes, the original author's
Yes.
intent. Peter Jackson did a great job of that in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he stated himself that I wasn't trying to insert my themes and stories, and I wanted to convey Tolkien's ideas to you. I wanted Tolkien's themes, not my own. And that's when a lot of this art can really shine. And it sounds like Denis Villeneuve did it very well with Dune here. That he really was worried about the author's themes coming through, and not just his own ideas at the time.
Yeah. Final part of this is He wanted to make a cautionary tale instead of a celebration of a hero. He wanted to create an anti-hero. For that, he wrote Dune Messiah to correct that perception of the first book. I have here some of the foreword. I don't know if you'd call it the foreword necessarily, but written by Frank Herbert's son, Brian. Dune Messiah is the most misunderstood of Frank Herbert's novels. The reasons for this are as fascinating and complex as the renowned author himself. Just before this first sequel to Dune was published in 1969, it ran in installments in the science fiction magazine Galaxy.
Again, so it's still serialized. Interesting.
Yep, exactly. The serialized Dune Messiah was named Disappointment of the Year by the satirical magazine National Lampoon.
Right.
The story had earlier been rejected by analog editor John W. Campbell, who, like the Lampooners, loved the majestic, heroic aspects of Dune and hated the antithetical elements of the sequel. His readers wanted stories about heroes accomplishing great feats, he said, not stories of protagonists with clay feet. The detractors did not understand that Dune Messiah was a bridging work, connecting Dune with an as-yet uncompleted third part of the trilogy. To get there, the second novel in the series flipped over the carefully crafted hero myth of Paul Muad'Dib and revealed the dark side of the Messiah phenomenon that had appeared to be so glorious in Dune. Many readers didn't want that dose of reality. They couldn't stand the demotion of their beloved charismatic champion, especially after the author had already killed off two of their favorite characters in Dune, the loyal Atreides swordmaster Duncan Idaho and the idealistic planetologist Liet Kynes. But they overlooked important clues that Frank Herbert had left along the way. In Dune, what Liet Kynes laid down, when he laid down in the desert, they didn't show this in the movie. So Kynes dies very differently in the book and in the film. In the film, she, who is changed,
switched him,
is killed by Sardaukar, and she summons the worm to come eat them.
Yeah.
In the film, he's just left to walk out in the desert and freaking die without his still suit. And he sees these hallucinations of his father. And he's sort of talking back and forth with him, not reconciling. He did not have a great relationship with his father, but having sort of epiphanies or realizations about his life in these final moments. He remembered the words of his father, Pardot, before and relegated to the back reaches of memory. No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero. That's in the novel.
Messiah or the
No, in
original?
Dune, Liet Kynes hears this
Interesting.
in the desert as he's dying. No more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall into the hands of a hero. Near the end of the novel, in a foreshadowing epigraph, Princess Irulan described the victorious Muad'Dib in multifaceted and sometimes conflicting terms as warrior and mystic, ogre and saint, the fox and the innocent, chivalrous, ruthless, less than a god, more than a man. And in an appendix to Dune, Frank Herbert wrote that the desert planet was afflicted by a hero. These sprinklings in Dune were markers pointing in the direction Frank Herbert had in mind, transforming a utopian civilization into a violent dystopia. In fact, the original working title for the second book in the series was Fool Saint, which he would change 2 more times before settling on Dune Messiah. But in the published novel he wrote concerning Muad'Dib, he is the Fool Saint, the golden stranger living forever, on the edge of a season. Let your guard fall, and he is there.
So it sounds like an archetype.
Yeah, so I'm not going to read the rest of that forward. I think that's sufficient, but he goes on to talk about how his dad worked in government, and based on what he had seen from politicians and leaders that highly influenced the way he viewed people who give certain promises or are charismatic or whatnot. But this is all essential into understanding why the changes in the film version were made. And in my opinion, every one of them makes the story stronger.
Okay.
I just read Dune and then watched these movies back to back, so I'm fairly familiar with what happens between them. And the second half of the novel, for me, does feel like it falls a little bit flat. I mean, there's exciting moments and there's good stuff there. It's a good novel. I like the novel a lot.
Yeah. But I agree with you in that it feels like it falls flat, especially as he proposes to the emperor's
Irulan,
niece. Is it his niece?
No,
or
it's his daughter.
It's his daughter,
Princess Irulan.
and it just kind of like, well, I get it. That's what his dad did, and that's how the stuff goes, right? The one you really like is your concubine, and then you've got some politically arranged marriage. Other than that, but she does just kind of go along with it in the books, and it's interesting, but yeah, it's not super compelling, and it does kind of wrap up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know exactly what just happened.
Yeah, it's
like he seemed pretty successful.
It really did feel. I hate the term rushed. I feel like that is a blanket term that's used a lot in critical analysis.
Okay,
that doesn't really say anything. It's a criticism without really giving any substance to it. So I don't like the use of that term. But the way that I felt by the end was, man, we're getting towards the end here. How is this going to like all actually wrap up with this limited amount of space, pages left in this book that I'm flipping through?
Well, the serialization thing might have been it. It might have been like, hey, we've had a space for Dune in this magazine for 24 months and the contract is over.
Yeah, because like there's a battle sequence where it appears that Paul loses. And it's like all of the in the book.
Okay.
All the Fremen are like, oh my gosh, our freaking Messiah figure like went all in on this battle and lost. His sister was captured, his son was killed, which is not in the movie. He and Chani have a son.
Yeah, they had a kid. Yeah.
And that son is killed by a counterattack or a counteroffensive which he had not foreseen.
Right, which shows you that he's not so perfect.
Right, that his prescience is not like perfect.
Right.
And it's like, oh, they killed my son, which was kind of a mirror to earlier in the book where his father said, they tried to kill my son. They tried to kill my... But here they actually did it. And it made it seem like... what I liked about it in the book was that it built it up in such a way to where it's like, okay, Paul is like... He's like God at this point. He can't lose. He knows everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But yet he didn't foresee this, is how it makes it seem. But then in the next scene, in Shaddam's little like portable palace thing that he brought with him to the planet, they bring Alia in and he's like talking with her and she's like, yeah, you know, basically it was a plan to get her close because the one thing that none of these like ruling men could have ever expected is a toddler who has the intelligence
of like a sage
salience of like a full grown sagely type character. They would not look at her as a threat. And she was carrying the Gom Jabbar with her, and she's the one who kills the Baron and basically opens the door for Paul to come in. And she's like, the only reason I allowed myself to be captured in that skirmish, we killed way more Sardaukar than they killed us, was because I couldn't face my brother when he would learn that his son was killed. So I allowed you to capture me, but I did it so I could kill the Baron.
That's crazy.
so it's very different. Hopefully this is illustrating how freaking different the ending of the movie
the ending is so different.
And the book are. But in any case, the way that it arrives and then resolves this ending in the book just felt like, whoa, that was so fast. I feel a little bit of whiplash. Yeah. I felt like, no, he lost, but then no is actually a victory. Like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
Right.
And I actually felt, when I first read the book, I don't even remember if this is accurate or not, but I felt like he felt forced to marry this other girl that he didn't actually want to, where it's like, dang it. All right. Okay. This didn't go the way I thought, but how about this? I'll marry your daughter, and then I guess, sorry, Chani, I wasn't planning on this. That's what it felt like. I don't remember if that's actually how the book goes or not, but that's what it kind of felt like to me. It was a lot more reluctant in that part.
Yeah, and in the movie, they make it very clear.
Yeah, this was
all of this was a plan.
The whole
and he
time.
Used everybody, including Chani, the whole way through.
Yeah.
Now, I want to put some nuance in that, which is why I think this movie is really good, and why I think the Dune story is really good.
It was only after he drank the blue liquid.
So he was transformed there. But also, before that,
Mm.
I actually took the note. It's 17 minutes, 42 seconds into the film.
Ooh.
He's having a conversation with his mother. They just reached the siege
Oh, right.
and are becoming ingratiated in Fremen society.
Right.
And he's looking at the believers over here and the non-believers over here.
Yeah.
And he says, look how your Bene Gesserit propaganda has taken root. Some of them already think I'm their Messiah, others false prophet. I must sway the non-believers. If they follow me, we can disrupt spice production. That's the only way to get to the Emperor. So he's plotting this
He is.
long before drinking the water of life.
You're right.
Long before any of that.
And
He's
doesn't-
already planning to use the believers to his ends
Yeah.
from the beginning.
And doesn't somebody bring that up? Like, hey, I think he says something like revenge. Like the whole point of this is revenge because they killed his father. Something like
Yes.
that. And not with anyone else's benefit in mind.
No.
Like just pure revenge.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
she says right after that, your father didn't believe in revenge.
Right.
He says, yeah, well, I do.
Yeah, well, I do. There you
So
go. So good
this
point. Yes.
this is inserted. This is a seed planted by
Yeah.
Villeneuve right at the beginning
Right.
to show you so you don't misunderstand at all. This is not Paul was a good guy until he drank that blue milk.
The blue milk.
No. Paul was manipulating people with the pretense that I just want to fight with you, Fremen. I'm not your Messiah. My mother was
Yeah.
trained to do that. This is not a fulfillment of prophecy. He's saying all these things so that someone like Chani, who doesn't believe in him, will accept him. He's
Right.
trying to get their loyalty. Now, the nuance in this is he really does not want the jihad to happen.
Right.
He has seen
He seems pretty, yeah.
this holy war,
Yeah.
and it's freaked him out.
It's like he wants to avenge his father, but he doesn't want to start a chain reaction that leads to the whole universe dying.
Yes.
But he really wants to avenge his father. And
Yes.
and when it comes to the point where it's like, look, the only way to avenge your father is to kill billions of other people.
Yeah.
He's like, the revenge wins out, right? He can't help it. He just wants revenge so bad that even that horrible dream that has plagued him for years keeps happening. He's like, whatever, that's fine. I'll do it.
It's that, and also, at least according to his perspective, it's the least bad of the futures. So I don't know.
Is there any way we can know if that's true or not? Well,
That's what
okay.
I think is nice that it's
Yeah.
left. He doesn't explain what those other horrible futures are.
yeah. Huh.
Is Paul really seeing something that's worse or as bad, or
Right.
is he allowing? Well, let's just walk through this as an example. Future one is I live out in the desert with Chani, and Shaddam continues to be emperor, and the status quo continues.
Right.
Is he considering that a worse future than the jihad and him getting his revenge?
I don't know, because what's on the other end of the jihad is always
Yeah.
the question. It's like, well, we got to go through the adversity because at the other end, there's the promise of new government, kind of like the 1776. It's like,
Yeah.
well, afterwards, then things will be better, you know? Whereas if we just stay living under the rule of the emperor, I don't know exactly how bad the emperor was. He didn't seem great. But I don't know how many millions of people he killed on a yearly basis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it could be that
in
was
Dune
horrible.
Messiah, I'm not sure how much I loved this just because it was a little too on the nose in one respect, but there's almost no other way to illustrate this for readers who aren't 15,000 years in the future. They're actually back in the golden age of Earth, as he calls it.
I see. Yeah.
But he's talking with his Gola, who I won't describe who that is as a matter of not spoiling Dune Messiah for anybody. But he's telling him to study the golden age of Earth. And he talks about this character, Genghis Khan, who killed this many million of people.
Yeah.
And
quite a
this
few.
other emperor, Adolf Hitler,
Nero. Oh, Hitler.
who killed this many millions of people.
Right.
And that these people pale in comparison to how many people I've killed. Right?
Yeah.
So he killed like 60 billion people is the estimate that is thrown out there. So my question is, and there's no answer to it, so it's a rhetorical question. Is he really seeing all of these futures where more than 60 billion people are killed? and this is like the least bad of jihads?
Mm-hmm.
Or is he seeing that alongside the jihad and also this other, to him, unacceptable future where he doesn't get revenge?
I have a thought
That's
here.
my main question.
I have a thought here. So, you know how he was not supposed to be the Kwisatz Haderach, right?
Yes.
Someone else was going to be that.
Yes.
And only in one generation.
Ooh.
Right?
What if
And-
Feyd-Rautha had been
Well,
the
'cause
Kwisatz Haderach? How many people would have died
that's what I'm
if
saying.
he had become?
Because I don't remember if Feyd-Rautha was considered. He wasn't as important in the books as he is in the movies.
No, he was a prospect in the book.
He was
too.
a prospect in the books.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's why
exactly
Lady
then.
Fenrir goes and like entices him and seduces him.
Yeah,
so
I
that
remember
they can,
that in
they
the
can
movie.
keep the Harkonnen lineage.
Yeah, I just don't remember reading
It
it
happens.
in the book.
It happens in the book too.
So if he became the Kwisatz Haderach, I could see that being worse than
Yes.
Paul Atreides.
Sure.
Maybe not. But it's at least we've opened a possibility there where it's like, hey, I have to do this first. If we wait any more time, it happens from somebody else.
You know what's so freaking messed up about that? And this is present in both the film and the novel, but the Bene Gesserit are totally cool with that. With Feyd-Rautha
because they can control him.
Because we have the levers of he hates being humiliated.
Yeah.
That's one lever. And the other is we can use sex as another
as a
means.
weakness,
Here's two weaknesses we have. It's
guide him.
irrelevant that he's psychotic.
Yeah, totally.
Because we can control that psychopathy.
Yes, as long
in
as
the
they direct
direction
it.
we want it to go. It's just like, holy fudge.
And so then here's the question. Let's say that there's an establishment that rules the universe, and it's not the Emperor, it's the Bene Gesserit. And there is, and they've been doing this for a long time.
Maybe
and they
do
have
some
a plan.
kind of ethical cleansing or ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
Where it's like we only want a future of humanity that are Kwisatz Haderachs.
Oh, that'd be crazy.
Not the rest of you normal people.
Once you reach the Ubermensch, then it's like, this is it. This is the top. This is the final goal. There's really nowhere to go from there other than, okay, more of them. Everyone has to be this now. We found the perfect person.
Yeah.
Let's start cloning. Let's start doing that. I don't know if that is their goal or not, but they control everything, and he would just do more of that. Whereas Paul is like, no, I'm going to fight against them. And when you fight against the people who rule the universe, you're going to have to kill a lot
people
are going to die. yeah. So I don't know. I guess I'm offering a situation there, but it clearly from Frank Herbert's own writing, probably not. Probably Atreides was worse.
Yeah,
would have been worse.
Yeah,
I guess. Otherwise, that
Feyd-Rautha
undercuts.
Harkonnen being the
that's what I mean.
Haderach.
No. Probably Paul Atreides was the worst option.
Oh,
because that's kind of his point, right? His point is, oh no, he was such a bad guy. This is bad. This is bad that this happened, and otherwise it wouldn't be bad.
Yeah,
right.
This is all speculation. It's kind of fun,
yeah.
But he doesn't show what are these horrible other possible futures that are so much worse than the 60 billion deaths from the jihad, holy war, that Paul ultimately decided, I'm taking that path because the others are worse. But it's at least a nice sort of thought experiment to sit here and think, well, are we just going to take Paul at his word for that without us having seen it? We're just going to accept that Paul knows what's better and what's worse?
His other visions proved to not be 100%. They were mostly accurate. They were quite very good accurate, but not 100%.
Right.
So
anyway, I like that in the film he makes it very, very clear and almost right from off the bat, I'm going to use these Fremen for my revenge.
Yeah.
So even if he doesn't want to commit jihad right now, that's not really important. Your intentions now are not what's important.
Yeah.
What's important is what you actually do when you get the power.
Yeah.
Which is, for most people who gain that level of power, not what they think they were going to do with it.
Yes, exactly.
They're not going to be as noble or as, righteous with that power as they assumed they were going to be.
Yeah.
Once it's in their hands and they get to be the one who's judge, jury, and executioner, you find out there are some deficiencies in your ethical compass.
And one of the biggest ones is that you have to always be right at that point, because you need to defend your position now, right? You need to look at everyone else as a threat to you being in power. And this is what always happens when people get to the top. It's like you start playing defense and you have to preemptively attack these people now before they attack
Which is
you.
exactly what Shaddam did with destroying House Atreides.
He foresaw this, and he said, "Okay, we're getting rid of them." But he made one little mistake.
And they say this in the movie very briefly. It's much more clear in the novel. He loved Leto like a son, and he was devastated that he was killed. Yet he was the one who freaking killed him.
Yeah, he was the one who did it.
And this is exactly what you're saying.
This is what people at the top have to do, right? You can't have loyalties. You can't believe in, like, even your own family becomes your enemies. Look at all throughout history with kings and emperors. And it's like kings would absolutely kill their own kids if they thought that it was going to preserve their power longer. They did it often. And so you get into this situation where it's like, but once again, the emperor's thinking, well, the best thing is that I remain in power because I can't do it. I love that it was that actor, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
he was so fun.
Why is his name escaping me right now?
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken.
You know, it's really hard with the cowbell.
I was expecting originally for that to be a super distracting thing. As soon as I saw Christopher Walken, all I was going to see was Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, he's actually a good actor.
Oh, he's great.
And people characterize him in a certain way.
Yeah, it's because of that one SNL skit with needs more cowbell, and that's
But he's actually an actor with range, and I think he's actually quite good in the movie.
Yeah, me too.
So it ended up being a casting choice that at first I was like, oh, that might end up being weird.
Yeah,
but
when I first saw him, I was like, what?
It turned out just fine.
But he's thinking the best thing for the universe is that I stay in power. I can't not do it.
It's close enough to where it is still funny.
So, and that's exactly what Paul Atreides is thinking, is like, hey, look. I don't trust anyone else. As long as I'm in power, the fewest number of people will die. Yeah. More people will die if I'm not in power. And that's what every dictator says. They all say it. They all but whatever preserves my power is for the greater good because I'm the best leader and I will result in the fewest, or at least the fewest number of good people dying.
Yeah.
Don't care about the bad people. They can die. But the less good people will die if I'm in power. And they all say this. And so, that's kind of the fallacy of Paul Atreides, all of a sudden being like, well, if I'm in power, the fewest number of people die. Yeah, that's what they all say, man. That's literally what they all say. Yeah. They all think they're doing good in their ethnic cleansings, and they don't have a clue because really they're just preserving their own power. But they can mask it by this, the greater good kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he becomes exactly what he was wanting to take revenge on. Yeah. Even worse. More likely.
Because who knows if Feyd-Rautha really, I don't know. They think, the Bene Gesserit seem to think that they could control him. But dude, that guy was off the rails. Who knows if he really could have been the Kwisatz Haderach.
He's such an interesting character to me. Yeah. Because, he just kills his handmaidens for fun. Yeah. And just does some totally messed up stuff.
I saw an interview with the actor where he said he had to try to get used to the idea of wielding a knife and killing people as a writer does grabbing a pencil and writing on paper. Yeah. It's like, that's brutal.
Yeah.
It's just that's what you do. Boom, you're dead.
This is the type of person he is. Yeah. But he's a more nuanced character than who you would typically see in that kind of role. I'm thinking maybe specifically of certain Game of Thrones characters.
Oh, I see.
Where he actually has a true deep sense of honor to him.
He does.
He respects his enemies.
Yeah. Do you love that Javier Bardem is in this movie?
I love it.
Because I'm thinking Anton Segura is what I'm thinking when you say that.
That character
it's
is
like
a great
he's got
example.
Some screwy set of morals that
he follows.
But he follows them. Yeah.
He has a moral compass. It's not like he has no ethics.
Well, when he fought in that Triangle Arena, Coliseum, when he took off his shields to fight that guy one-on-one, that's he has some type of honor where it's this was just for show, but you're actually a really good fighter, and let's see, let's do this, for real.
Let's
and everyone
actually
else stand
make
down.
it an even playing field.
Yeah, and that does take some type of a kind of virtue.
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
And he shows respect to his enemy as they die.
Well, and
real
also,
respect.
That's true. That's right. But also with Paul, when Paul says, may your knife chip and shatter, he kind of smiles and he repeats it back to him. Yeah. Okay, these are... Now, I couldn't tell. Is that a Fremen thing to say or is that a Harkonnen thing to say? I don't know if Paul Atreides... I want to
say it's an Atreides thing.
Wrong! You think I'm an idiot?
Is that a Fremen thing to say? The other thing that Paul realizes when he drinks that blue goop is, I'm a Harkonnen.
Yes.
And that, I wonder, I don't know, because I've never really known anybody who has had something like that big of a shakeup in life. But this kind of does happen where it's like, hey, your dad's not your real dad and this other somebody else is your dad. Or maybe it's like, oh, you're actually the child of the enemy, so to speak. And what that does to you to know or to believe that you're descended from who you thought were your enemies, and these people that you're fighting are actually your cousins, and all that stuff. Does that factor into his decision to like, oh, I should probably do this thing that I was meant to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then even his mother also says, yeah, I didn't know until I drank this stuff either. Yeah. I'm the freaking slob's kid. Like, I don't know. Like, and you would think that you'd be able to be like, no, separate yourself from your biological parents and be like, no, like, as you know, sometimes people do get adopted out of horrible circumstances to great parents. And then when they learn that they were adopted and that their real dad is like a meth addict and stuff, and it, you know, in a difficult situation, and then you have to, or maybe even worse, you know, was just really very dangerous to be around. Then it's like, well, am I that? Right. And you would like to think, at least in maybe a more secular sense, that you'd be able to be like, no, it's just, it doesn't matter who your parents are. But there's a deep part of you that really does feel that connection to family and to biological, you know, your biological family. And that does kind of play with people sometimes. And I almost wonder if this is one of those, that revelation, just like Luke finding out Darth Vader's his father, right? Yeah. Well, by the way, George Lucas, man, the more I read Dune, there's a lot
of like, stealing.
George Lucas was a genius in the way he brought it to film, right? Yeah. In a way that Dune isn't so obviously adaptable, at least at
Lucas
that time.
Is a filmmaker. Yeah. Herbert's a writer. So Herbert doesn't get to helm the film version.
Of 84. You're right. Yeah. I'm just saying George Lucas, he's like 90% a thief, but he's not like 100% a thief, because he really did have to use some genius to bring that thing to the screen.
Star Wars is not a rip-off of Dune, and it is a very different story that is an actual true hero's journey story.
Exactly, yeah. But I wonder if Lucas is one of the people who was mad at Herbert, who was like, what? Paul Atreides was beast. What did you do, man? What'd you do?
But yeah, there are definitely some Dunisms. Yeah. All over.
But that played with Luke. When he figures that out, then he's like, oh man, really? And then he has am I like my dad? Because I'm remembering now, that cave scene where he cuts off the head came before before he learned that he was.
And in many ways, Luke was the same.
And in many ways, he really was.
He was not patient. He wanted it now.
Right.
He didn't want to.
Because Yoda wouldn't train him.
Yeah. So he had many similar traits.
Yeah. And so, but when you find out that that's your father, it just makes you different.
Yeah.
It makes you different.
Yeah.
So that's something I'd kind of have a little sympathy on Paul for.
Yeah. So anyway, that more or less, I think, sufficiently breaks down what the story's really trying to say.
Yeah.
And the fact that I think Villeneuve's choices, every one of them clarifies that.
Yeah.
To me, makes it the right choice to make.
Yeah.
If the point of the story has always for me been, I'm trying to tell you something. There's a theme here. There's a reason that I'm writing the story. It's to tell you something about messianic figures.
Right. Yeah.
And all of the movie's choices clarify that.
Right.
In a way that were more ambiguous or easier to miss in the original novel. And so to me, this is my opinion, it's a superior telling of that story.
It'd be hard for me to argue with that, other than I just love the book Dune a lot.
It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I really, really do. I'm not saying this as some kind of, the book sucks and the movie's better. The book is really, really good. And there are elements of the second half of the book that are missing from the movie that I like, and I missed that.
But the movie is also really, really good.
The movie is spectacular.
Yeah.
And I think that there's just technical storytelling things that Villeneuve is better at, understands better. When he reveals information, to me, is just much, much better. I think Herbert tended to give away big plot twists much too early. He revealed, for example, the lineage of Jessica in the still tent long before they even met the Fremen. And in the movie, she learns it when she drinks the water of life, but Paul doesn't learn it till he drinks it. So you don't get it until he's fully become Kwisatz Haderach later.
Yeah,
in the book, he gets it after his first instance of prescience, and he sees the jihad in the still tent. And he tells his mother right there, "You're the freaking Baron's daughter." Yeah. It just seemed like a whoa, that's the type of thing you save for later in the typical sort of storytelling structure.
Well, I almost wonder too if this just is a product of the serialization of the way that it was being
totally
because
could be.
He was like, okay, I have this really boring scene. I need to spice it up. That it basically, what is it, chapter 2 or 3, where it's just the dinner scene where they're all just kind of talking about not important things, but in the background there's something going on, and you're able to perceive somebody's thoughts, which are, I'm betraying everyone right now, and that makes that chapter interesting. If you can only get one chapter a month or whatever, it's not part of a book that you're reading.
That's a very good point.
I really wonder if that's a lot of his decisions where he's like, I got to throw something in here because this is all they get for a month. And if I lose them this month, they don't come back the next month. I need to keep them every single month.
That's a very good point.
Let's feed them a little more. Hey, there's more going on here than you think.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I think a strong counterpoint to what I just said. That could very well explain why.
Once I found out it was serialized, that opened the door.
It might not have had anything to do with Herbert not understanding the appropriate place to reveal it, as much as he's writing in a totally different format than I'm reading it from.
Yeah.
I'm reading it as a novel. It wasn't published as a novel. So that's a very, very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. However, I also think when he introduces Feyd-Rautha is weird in the book, because
I actually don't remember when he's introduced.
Chapter 2.
Oh, really?
Feyd-Rautha's there, and the Baron's speaking with his mentat, Peiter, and they're just basically explaining what's to happen in the next freaking several chapters.
Yeah.
They're just telling you how this is going to end.
It's to hook people, to keep them reading. Keep reading this novel.
And he's basically just trying to get Feyd-Rautha to understand the art of statecraft and how you go about. And he's not interested. He's like, "Oh, this is boring. Do I have to stay here?" He's like, "Yes, pay attention. Like, this is way important because you are my future heir.
Right.
And you need to understand how to plan and strategize like this."
Yeah.
That's basically what he's introduced for. But then you don't see him again all the way until the freaking birthday. What do you call it? The Colosseum fighting scene.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in the movie, I think it's way better to just introduce him when he starts becoming important in the story, which is when he's going to be inheriting the Baron's. When he's basically announced as being the heir to Baron Harkonnen, even though his brother Rabban is older.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
But he was set up to fail on purpose on Arrakis so that the people would love Feyd-Rautha when he came. He would seem like a liberator in comparison to Rabban.
See, once again, these people, they have their plans, and they're like, this plan will go great. Except they didn't foresee one thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, but all of them, this is the Emperor, he had a perfect plan, but one thing went wrong, and it ruined the whole plan. Then the Harkonnen, perfect plan, but one thing went wrong. And then even Paul Atreides, one thing went wrong. Even his mother, even the Bene Gesserits, the perfect plan, 10,000-year plan. One thing went wrong, and the whole thing is just screwed up now. They just ruined the entire plan. Yeah. I almost wonder if that's why Frank Herbert has this what would you call it? Why he just doesn't like the idea of a Messiah in general is that because obviously if you get a hero, heroes are great if they're good and stay good but what is Aaron Eckhart? What is it? And The Dark Knight. What is he? Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey says that you either die a hero
or you live
long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah.
And there's something really deeply true about that, which I think is mostly what Frank Herbert is saying.
Yeah.
Like, look, man, you can be a hero for a bit, but you better die quickly after that, because otherwise the hero status is going to turn you into something else.
Yeah,
but
I wonder, this with a lot of religious figures all throughout history.
It's all throughout history.
it's really easy
Except
to look
Jesus.
on this. It's really easy to look on this person as a monster for someone maybe outside of the religion for all of these things that you
Right.
see in the history that the members might ignore or not even know, and it's
Sure,
very
yeah.
easy to look at that and just like
From an outside perspective, yeah.
define the person as this,
Right.
but it never starts that way.
Never.
Almost ever. It starts with
Something else.
at least some good intentions and seeing the need for
Right.
a movement to change something that is not good about
Right.
the current status quo
then-
or whatever.
And then this does make me wonder about with Frank Herbert, which is that if you have a hero or if you're looking to a Messiah, you're gonna preempt it. You're gonna think, oh, this guy's the Messiah because he has some of the qualities. But
Yeah.
there's no way that he'll ever possess all of the qualities unless he's literally God, right?
Yeah.
Like that. He's a human. He's a person. And but then I just wonder, just in general, how does Frank Herbert expect change to happen if there aren't great people throughout history that lead movements? Basically, I don't know how things happen. I would assume maybe that he would be more on the end of, well, just everyone together does it, but that isn't what normally happens. The way that history moves is great people emerge and they are followed, and sometimes they really screw up, but sometimes they don't, and then things get better, and that it's usually a small number of people. I don't know. I'd want to ask him
Probe
what
him
his
about that a little bit.
opinion is about that. If all Messiah or if all heroes, like the worst thing that can happen to a society is a hero. That sounds right like 90% of the time, but not
Maybe
always.
you could rephrase that to the best and worst thing that can happen.
There you go. So it'll
'Cause
be the
there-
best
it's
of times.
too-
It'll be the worst of
It's
times.
literally both.
I
Because
could see that.
we need to move. Like,
Yeah.
we can't stay where we're at.
And people need to instigate the movement.
And someone needs to instigate it, and ideally that person is going to do all the right things. But that's impossible because we're human beings, and it tends to be hardwired into us that power corrupts us absolutely.
I think that's been proven throughout history.
It's almost like it's just an unfortunate byproduct of the process.
Yeah.
You're
Where
going
it's
to
like-
have somebody step in to make it happen,
Right.
and that person's going to fall.
And that person's going to fall.
And they're going to cause a lot of suffering. And I don't like saying it's necessary because I don't want to believe that that's true. But you're touching
Maybe
on
accurate.
something that is at least worth considering in all of this, is that seems to be the case.
And then Denis Villeneuve kind of takes it a step further, as you were saying, specifically with Johnny's character, where she's like, all prophecies are bad. Fine, prophecies are meant to control people. Okay, some of them, yes, I totally agree with that. Many of them. But a prophecy can be something as simple as like the way the sun sets reflects the deeper truth of that you're going to die one day. That's a prophecy.
Yeah.
Right? You are going to die one day. It's based on the patterns of the universe. As far as I can tell, everything dies, but that doesn't make it less of a prophecy because it hasn't happened yet. And we don't know. Something may change between now and 50 years from now that makes it so that you don't die.
Yeah.
But all things considered, I can, it's a loose prophecy, but that is generally speaking a prophecy. And then you can whittle that down and get a little bit more specific about it, or you can tell stories that kind of, reflect these larger scale patterns. But I think Channy's more specifically referring to the prophecy of a Messiah. I think, because this is what I kind of got from Denis Villeneuve, is the prophecy of a Messiah makes it so that people sit on their hands and wait for things to happen to them instead of getting up and doing it themselves.
Yes, right.
However, once one person gets up to do it themselves, they're a hero, and that's a bad thing that can happen to society, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the prophecy is somebody is going to help you guys out, and that inevitably will come true. It has to happen at some point.
Yeah.
But I think she's saying that we can do this ourselves. We don't need an outsider to show up and do it
from
for
the
us.
outer worlds.
Right.
We don't need Elisa and Al-Gaib to do it. We should do it.
Exactly. But my people have all been brainwashed to think that they can't do it until a Messiah shows up. And the northern tribes are trying to show them that it can be done. While the people in the south are like, no, we're just waiting.
Yeah.
We're just waiting, and it's never going to happen if they just wait. And that's what the Bene Gesserit want, is for them to just do nothing and wait.
Yeah.
But by the same token, nothing's happening. the northern tribes doing their best, but nothing's happening. It takes one great person for everyone to follow. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating too is that when Paul Atreides steps up as the Lisan al-Gaib, and in that moment, just that crazy moment where he's just pointing to people and he's just like, your father did this and you did this.
It was
a very
simultaneously the most inspiring and frightening scene I have seen in a film in a long time.
I wish I saw that scene in particular. I wish I saw that scene in theaters. Yeah.
It was crazy, dude. Yeah. It was crazy.
I could tell. And that the way he was speaking, and he finally decided, I'm going to do this. And when he first goes up, and he's just like, will no one challenge me, basically. Yeah. He immediately challenges them. But the reason they're challenging him is because he broke their rules.
Yes.
So he's not following their rules.
No.
He's breaking them, and he's making new rules. And this just shows that these people were capable of getting out of their system that they had made that was keeping them from doing anything. They were capable of doing it, but they needed somebody to push them into it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for them, it was Paul Atreides who did it. But they could have, the rules could be broken, and they were willing to accept that. They didn't even know it. Yeah. They thought that no one can break our rules until he does it, and he does it in such a way that they are just willing to follow him, and he doesn't have to kill his friend, who he was going to have to kill in order to speak, and he's just like, no.
Because, well, I want to bring attention real quick to something Mix is saying here.
Oh, yeah.
He's asking if you read War and Peace. Tolstoy is very suspicious of great men, too.
Yes, he is, yeah.
He writes, I can't read because I'm blind. He writes a tract on history at the end of War and Peace on what drives the historical process and how great men are simply signs that people latch onto but are themselves not crucially the drivers of the process.
This sounds like something that early 20th century Russia really identified with.
Yeah, sure.
In particular with the revolution in 1917.
So, man, there's so many things that I don't know what to address first. I guess maybe we can do this. I think we've pretty well established what the movie's trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
And that the fact that it does it really, really well.
Very well. Very well.
Now I want to talk about how. So the technical filmmaking is phenomenal. I mean, the movie is paced really well. The sound and the visuals are spectacular. Villeneuve is visually just a very, very good director.
Oh, yeah.
There's some very exciting sequences that are inserted in there that are not in the novels, but are maybe implied to have happened during time skips. You see this process of him becoming ingratiated in their culture, winning their loyalty, while you're seeing Jessica more or less take it in the South.
Yeah.
And sort of paving the way. But he and his mother are not aligned in the way they want to go about this. Even though he himself said to her before she became the Reverend Mother, we need to convince the unbelievers in order for me to get my revenge.
Right.
I really felt impressed to point out from the beginning his intentions were to use them, just not for a jihad.
Oh, right.
Simply for the revenge on the emperor.
Right.
Right.
And it'll help them too. They're trying to attack the Harkonnen, and he's like, here, I'll lead you to do it. And then two birds with one stone.
His plan was to win their loyalty through pretending he was sincere and, oh, no, I don't want to lead you. I just want to fight beside you.
Yep.
And to a certain extent, there was a half-truth in that.
Right.
Maybe he didn't care to rule the Fremen, but he certainly wanted to use them as a military commander against his enemies.
Right.
So it's true and not true.
Yeah.
So his intentions were false from the start. And I think that was very important to plant.
I think you're
right away.
Because that seed is ultimately what undoes him, I think.
Yeah.
But
and I think that line being in there, as far as I remember, I don't think it's in the book. So he's instilling that and clarifying that from the start.
Yeah, in the book, it's not until that last chapter where you're just like, whoa, his ambitions are way beyond just what we saw him do just now.
Yeah. So he's fighting with the Fremen. His idea is, I'm just going to, through fighting alongside them, through becoming a comrade, I'm going to gain their loyalty, and then they will want to help me take revenge on the Harkonnens and the Emperor, since we have a common enemy.
Yeah.
However, his mother wants to go beyond that.
Yep.
No, we're going to make you into the Kwisatz Haderach, and we're going to get this entire religion on board with you as their messiah figure. And he's like, no, 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 no. And they fight about this. I think one of my favorite lines was he was talking about all the Bene Gesserit propaganda. Look what this is not even their belief. This is your belief that you gave to them. And she says,
do you not think I also feel the weight of the prophecy?
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
And he's right about that. So
totally.
I think he's being sincere there.
Yeah.
So Paul is
he's conflicted.
Is a nuanced and a rounded character.
Right.
Yes, he has intentions to use these people from the start, but not in a jihad on the universe, and not necessarily to be their messiah figure and manipulate them through means of their religion.
Yeah.
But he still wants to use them, and that is the chink in the armor that leads to him becoming what he didn't want to be.
Well, and that's Boromir with Lord of the Rings, right? Where it's like just the desire to want to use it is all it takes. And that's all that the ring needs, and then you're down the path of destruction.
Exactly.
But here's another thought that I just had. They were screwed if he didn't become the emperor. Basically, the Bene Gesserit, if he takes over the spice planet and the people, like, they aren't just going to let that planet go. That's all the spice. They need it for intergalactic travel. They're going to return to that planet, and they're going to take it back over so they can get their spice, right? They need the fix, and they need to be able to go and hyper travel across the universe. The Bene Gesserit, we're not going to allow them to get away with this for that long. Yeah. They only have a few years to figure this out, and once it is clear that they have betrayed the Bene Gesserit and that they know that they're still alive, they need to take it all the way to the top. Otherwise, the Bene Gesserit are going to come and kill her and kill Paul. Right?
Yeah.
They aren't
and Guild and the other houses. And,
totally. And there's no way that they were going to get away from it for long unless they went to the top and became the emperor. Yeah. And I think that's more or less what she's thinking. Like, you don't get it. We can't just do this small scale stuff you're talking about. If we don't take over everything, then it all comes right back to us.
Yeah, there's an epiphany he has in the book somewhere during the course of this where he's like, it all hinges on spice.
Yes.
Like, this is the currency of the freaking universe. And he who controls the spice basically has all the power.
And that's what this movie opens up on.
Yeah.
That I can't remember. The power of spice is the power over all. Something like that.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
The freaking what is it? Mongolian throat singer that leads off each movie.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think in stages he begins to realize the necessity. And I really do believe it was a moment that was painful for him.
Yeah.
Because even Shawnee's coming to him now, like, we have to go south. Like, our siege was destroyed. There's nothing left for it. Like, Feyd-Rautha has now come and taken over, like, the Harkonnen spice production.
Right.
And he's just freaking ruthless.
He's brutal.
In the way that he's going about, like, you know, destroying all of this Fremen threat in the north. So, like, we have to go south and regroup. Even she's telling him this now. And he has seen, if I go south, I become the freaking leader of this jihad.
Yeah,
I can't do that. And there's a moment where she's just sort of there supporting him, just almost pleading with him to come. And he's like, if I go south, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. And what she says in response is, you're never going to lose me, Paul. As long as you don't lose yourself, or as long as you stay the man you are, or something something along those lines. As long as you remain who you are.
If I go south, I might lose you.
You will never lose me, Paul Atreides. Not as long as you stay who you are.
And that's exactly what he knows. That's why he's going to lose her, because he's going to lose this person he is now, this person who wants the things he wants now and doesn't want the jihad. And that part is going to go away when he drinks the water of life.
Right.
which is what is going to happen if he goes south.
Yep.
And he finally says, I will go south and secure a future for your people, and I will do what is necessary. And that just almost hangs like this foreboding cloud over her.
Go across the storms with you. Go south. Bring your people to safety. And then I will do what must be done.
So they end up going south. He drinks the water. He awakens as the Kwisatz Haderach, and he has his full powers of prescience now. And that scene where they go, it's like where all of the religious leaders, the leaders of the Fremen sort of gather to do their war strategizing or, just leading in general of the people. The rule is that only the leaders of the Sieches are allowed to speak in this sort of hearing or whatever.
So he has to kill his friend.
Their rule is the strongest is the one who leads the Sieches. So if somebody wants to speak there, they have to challenge whoever the current person is and kill them. And they explain this a little more thoroughly in the book. There's not enough space in the movie to really get this across. He does mention it, but he's like, do you think I am an idiot that I would cut off my right hand right before going into battle?
Right.
I'm not killing Stilgar. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm an idiot? Is basically what he's saying to these people, right? Like, your ways change, and this way is really dumb, and I'm not doing it, and we're not doing it because we're going to lose if we do it that way. We're doing it my way instead. So he's basically just directly challenging their whole set of customs.
Their culture,
And so he just walks straight in there and starts speaking. And they're like, you're not supposed to do this. And Stilgar's
who wants to
offering
stop
himself, kill me, Muad'Dib, please. Because he believes fully.
I don't care that you don't believe. I believe. Yeah, that was good. And that's Javier Bardem, right?
Yeah.
I didn't recognize him at all.
He's such a good actor.
Oh, he's
he's phenomenal.
But the people are ready to draw swords and to kill him. The punishment for interrupting a leader during the conference is death.
Yeah.
Right?
And he basically calls them out
who's going to do it?
Who here thinks that they can challenge the Lisan al-Gaib?
Yeah.
Because these are all the believing Southern Fremen, right?
This is the first time he's called
just
himself
points
that.
right out to somebody who seems like a strong, good, a warrior, a strong fighter. Do you think you could do it?
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts basically prophesying or telling him about his life and things like that. Oh, fetch Lisan al-Gaib. He's Lisan al-Gaib. And then he comes to this other person and tells him through his powers of prescience, things he shouldn't know about him, and basically starts convincing everybody. And it's just this ramping moment. And I have been sort of dreading talking about this because I know I'm going to get emotional.
Yeah.
This is one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
And it is like we talked about in Journey, which we just recorded. It's a moment that made me feel so small.
Oh, good.
Like the sense of awe,
Yeah.
which I think is what all of those people are feeling in the presence of this growing Kwisatz Haderach, Lisan al-Gaib Messiah.
Right.
Is just totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's...
And how could any of them? They're powerless against this.
It's so crazy because I've seen the movie 2 times now. And the first time, I don't think I remembered much of any of the dialogue in the scene.
Oh, yeah.
Because the sound and visuals and just the power of the voice itself.
Yeah.
When you take the language part, the words said out of it, it's just the way he's performing. The way they're performing in response to it, the sound and music and the way that it is building is just overwhelmingly dark.
Yeah.
In a way that is just profound. You're just watching this unravel in front of your eyes, knowing how bad this is, and they see it. And by they, I really mean Stilgar, sees it as this beautiful fulfillment of prophecy.
Right.
And that really stuck with me because I feel like I've kind of been on both sides of that perspective in certain areas of my life.
Sure, yeah.
I can't explain to anyone who has not grown up a very religious person or at any point in your life been very deeply religious, the power of prophecy
Oh, sure.
and belief in a prophecy.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And how much that means to you.
Right.
And when you start to see the signs of that coming true, how much it validates you. It is this beautiful, euphoric feeling that is indescribable in such a way to where it's almost the whole purpose of a religious person's existence is that moment. They're working to that moment. They study all of the signs. They see it coming about. They try to help it happen.
Yeah.
They try to be a part of the movement that brings that thing to pass.
Right.
They talk about it and they struggle in their faith. Is it really going to happen? I don't know. And they band together to help strengthen each other's faith. No, keep believing, brother and sister. It's going to happen, I promise. Keep looking for the signs. Keep your faith.
This is Planescape Torment, right?
Yeah.
But belief can make things happen.
Can make it happen, exactly. And you have a figure who steps in who knows what that means to those people and manipulates that belief into a way to where they can even demonstrate to them the fulfillment of that prophecy. That is the moment they've been living their entire existence for. So all they wanted was to get to that moment. And the person's lying to them for their own thing. And they see it. You can see it in Javier Bardem's performance. He says, Lisan al-Gaib. It's
he's
just
crying.
Euphoric.
Yeah.
Galvanizing, beautiful, validating thing. All of you who told me that I was crazy.
Look at me now. Yeah, look at...
It was real. I knew it was true.
Yeah.
It's a sense of personal validation that is so important to them. And the person who is taking advantage of that for his own means, for his own ambition, for his own power, there is something that strikes me as just like incredibly evil about that.
Yeah.
And the reason why it has, in this particular moment of my life, I mean, there's been several moments, but the reason I say I've been on both sides of that, it's very easy for people who maybe lose their faith when they learn certain aspects of it that they didn't know, or even if it's not your own, even if it's another faith that you've studied. Say you grew up Christian and you're studying Islam, or you're studying some other religion, and you're saying, oh, look at all these terrible things this prophet did.
Right.
And clearly he's using these people and all this stuff. It's really easy to just like turn around and paint that figure as this like awful, horrible person.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And be like, oh, only an evil person would do that.
Right. Because, as you mentioned, it is an evil
Because
thing
it's
to
a
do.
Terribly evil thing to do.
Yeah.
And especially when it ends up with a lot of abuse of innocent people.
Right.
There's one particular figure who I'm not going to name right now, who this happened very close to me. Like, and I saw people that I knew and cared about lulled into this person's charisma and terribly abused.
Right.
Using scripture, belief, religious practice as a means of manipulating those people, as a means of building themselves up as a messianic figure, taking advantage of the fact that they had specific needs in their lives that he could fulfill. And watching how easily so many could be taken in by a person of this kind of charisma. And just how much damage can be done to so many people was terrifying. It was terrifying that not only did it happen to people I knew, but that it happened right next to me, and I didn't see it. And that got me thinking about some other times in my life, other people I knew, maybe even ancestors, going back, other figures that I've studied, and seeing this pattern. But when it really hit me was when I realized I had done it. And I don't think I had the same level of ambition or, malintent behind it. But I was taken in by the belief to such an extent that lying in this way for the purpose of faith promoting was justified somewhere to me. And I watched people having the same reaction as Stilgar to my words to a total lie. Not just a complete lie. And being on both sides of that has just been like it's been like a devastating period of time for me. And this movie just like totally gut punched me in perhaps the most profound way possible. The way that scene is executed is perfect. It's brilliant. And I watched Stilgar seeing the fulfillment of his prophecy as this euphoric, amazing, beautiful thing, and knowing how it was actually totally the opposite. It was going to be this horrific, violent, insane holy war that would kill billions of people and bring the suffering of billions of people and bring about the abuse and manipulation of billions of people. But this moment was beautiful to him. It's crazy how like it can be both so inspiring a scene in the sense of this as someone who aspires to be a storyteller or a filmmaker can see the technical mastery of how they achieved that emotion. They led me into that and just like boom, hit me with that with such technical filmmaking mastery. And it is so inspiring in that sense. And yet at the same time, it's so devastating and depressing that I just like fell apart.
Goodness.
That's the power, I guess, of storytelling in a film. And I don't really even know how to like wrap up my thoughts on that other than to say it was sort of an awakening kind of moment where it was putting so many things in my life into perspective and really serving as the true warning that Frank Herbert meant for me to read when I read the book 15 years ago and had no idea what I was reading. And Villeneuve's film, probably because I've had more lived experience since then, I thought about these things and many other, it hit me at the right time, but gets across in the clearest possible way. And it's just astoundingly good. And seeing that in the theater, I don't know if this movie will ever come back, but I suggest if it's not in theaters, go see it at somebody's dope home
if you
theater.
have a rich friend.
Who has like a big projector and like surround sound.
Surround sound, yeah.
Go see it there.
7.1.
But make sure to see it with full power sound attached. Because that's when it really hits. But anyway.
Oh, that's crazy. I wish I saw it in theaters. There's that scene also, and it's just not Dune, but in Planescape Torment, there's the scene where he sees it from both ends with the sensory stone. And it's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. It was like a life-changing thing. And I didn't even, like I said, the first time I watched it, it was almost like I wasn't hearing the words. I was just feeling the concept boiled down to its greatest, most fundamental essence.
Yeah.
Communicated through sound and visual, not through words. And so when I watched it the second time with the words, I was like, oh yeah, that's from the book, that's from the book, that's from the book. I didn't even realize those lines were there. But again, I was like basically tearing up watching it. It had almost the same effect the second time, even without the theater experience, just because of what I've been going through recently. But
what's the Emperor's daughter's name?
Irulan.
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 So part of what makes that so incredibly evil, I just kind of want to add to that, right? The difficulty of, an experience like that, but specifically, within the context of the movie, is that Irulan says, she's just kind of describing Arrakis, and she's saying that like the southern parts are just like ridiculous, and this is the kind of planet where nothing can survive without faith. There is what she says. Nothing can, or no one or nothing. I can't remember because there's deer mouse
in the south specifically, the southern part of Arrakis.
No one can
live
survive
there without faith.
Without faith, and that I love that sentence right there, because faith, in order to survive, they have to have faith.
Yeah.
They don't live without it, which is what makes it so dastardly and evil when somebody takes advantage of that. They need this to survive. This is water to them. This is like air to them.
Yep.
And when you come in and you manipulate that faith to your own ends, they can't not have faith. They have to. They don't live without it. They need to believe in a better future. This is such a difficult place to live.
Yeah.
The climate and everything about it. It's very difficult to live. The dust storms, the worms, all of this. They need to believe in something. And they have, and unfortunately, that can then be manipulated into here's a fake thing to believe in. And then what happens to their society once it's revealed that this faith thing that they require on to live falls apart?
Yeah.
They fall apart, right?
Yeah.
Like they can't survive there without it. And somebody just came in and undercut their entire culture. And it was the Bene Gesserit thousands of years ago. But then Paul just, puts the cherry on top, just makes it all happen knowingly. And also knowing that they need, like, I don't know that the girl, that the Emperor's daughter, that she knew anything more than Paul was watching on those movie screens when he was learning about Arrakis before he came down. It's just like, this is what it's like. These are the people here, right? Yet then he still can go in there and knowing that, the air, he contaminates the air that they breathe knowingly, knowing that he just poisoned their oxygen supply. Yeah, that makes it all the more evil. And that was one of the things. That was a big note that I took for this movie. I took like 3 notes. That was one of them.
Yeah.
The other one is the one that humans can never resist. No human in the world will ever be able to resist this, ever. But it comes from the New Testament. And I think that this really, I think that as Frank Herbert is creating this, Messiah figure, he's referencing the Bible all the time. And it's all throughout Dune. What do they call it? The Orange Bible or the something Bible?
The Orange Catholic Bible.
The Orange Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
That there is, I don't know to what extent that resembles our current Bible or not, but maybe to some degree. But either way, he's constructing this Messiah figure who is taken to the pinnacle of the temple and is shown the universe and is promised all of this can be yours if you do one thing. Bow down and worship me. That was what Satan says. But the idea behind that story is like, betray your principles, violate what you know to be true. Mm-hmm. You can have the whole world. You can have everything if you would just do that one thing.
Yeah.
And, in the New Testament, Jesus says no. And then in Paul's case, he looks at that and he can't say no.
Yeah.
He can't.
Yes.
I don't think anyone can say no to that. Mm-hmm. And he is given that exact same promise. But what's the difference? Well, he's just a dude. He's just a kid who hates his mom for even teaching him to be a Bene Gesserit with the voice and all the skills. He thinks she made him into a freak. And he's been raised to do these things that he didn't even know about. And all of a sudden it's being revealed and thrust onto him in the moment when he's so vulnerable because his dad just died, right?
Yeah.
And he's been offered the world. And he can't say no.
Can't say no.
He tries so hard. I don't
as hard
want
as a
to look at
person
him
can try
negatively.
Yeah,
but
I think
he's a kid, and this was thrust on him when he was so young.
that's another thing about Dune that I think I love so much about it is that it's really easy when you're telling a cautionary tale about messianic figures to demonize the person.
You brought that up, yeah.
As another way of being too on the nose about it.
Right.
Make the person as despicable and evil from the start as possible.
Right.
And just make it like, yeah, only this type of person would do this.
No redeeming elements whatsoever. Yeah.
It's you. You are the type of person who would become
exactly
Lisan al-Gaib.
Yeah, well, this is another part of that whole thing when Satan takes Jesus up to be tempted in the desert, right, with no water. That he also says, hey, there's a prophecy that says like you'll if you dash your foot on a rock that the angels will bear you up. Why don't you do that? Just go ahead and fulfill that prophecy right now. And once again, Jesus is like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
No, he says no. But then when Paul, it's like, hey, there's all these prophecies. You could totally fulfill this prophecy right now, and it would look just like you had done it and all that stuff. And Paul, of course, he's trying to say no, but ultimately he goes right into it and he goes, okay, I'll do the thing. I will fulfill the prophecy right now because at the behest of this evil plan that I know is already happening. Okay, I'll fulfill that prophecy, right? What was the other one? Oh, turn this rock into bread, I guess was the other one. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's starving because Jesus is fasting.
Yes.
He's hungry. And so
Jesus is like, I'll just
he tempts him to transform
I don't know
the rock
that
into
one
bread.
quite has a parallel, but the other two certainly have parallels.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. And basically Frank Herbert is trying to undercut what Jesus was able to do. He's saying, hey, here's what a normal person would do given those same temptations in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
They would say, please, yes.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Yeah. And I think anybody.
I
think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Paul is not some psychopath Feyd-Rautha who we could all see turning into a psychopathic emperor who goes about murdering tens of billions of people.
Yeah.
It's not just Feyd-Rautha who would do that. It is also you, the viewer.
Yeah.
Just like this normal. Paul's not entirely normal because he was also the son of a duke. But he comes from, I think, what's embodied there is the moral compass of Leto, right?
Yeah.
A person
who led with his heart.
Like Leto would not abuse that power.
Right.
And Paul loved his father, and Paul wanted to be like his father.
Yep.
But
he won't
even a person like his father,
yeah.
if tempted with that level of power,
I think so, yeah.
That's what it's trying to say, which means also you, viewer, who
you.
probably is a good person and probably sees yourself as a
Most
virtuous
likely.
person and someone who wants to do the right thing, even you.
And you know what's wild? Maybe even, let's say you don't ever get the chance to like do anything like that. Are you going to be one of those supporters?
Yeah.
You know, you brought up like
are you gonna follow that?
Are you going to be one of the people cheering him on in 1935 in Germany? You know, are you going to be one of those people waving the flag, right? Because you think you wouldn't be. You're probably wrong. You probably would be, and that's why everyone loved his book when he wrote it. They missed all the signs. They missed them, and they went down the path of Paul Atreides, get a tattoo. He's my hero. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And it's like you didn't see the warning signs, and now I'll show you what happens with this person. And you would have been the kind of person who would have followed him all the way down and then probably defended him even as he started doing bad things because he was your hero.
Yeah. So the only other thing I want to say is that the reason why I think all of this was so successful and so much stronger here was because of what Denis Villeneuve said was his superpower, or his secret weapon, I should say, was Chani.
Oh, yeah.
He changed Chani to be a character who saw what we're talking about, even in the man that she loved.
That's hard.
Which makes it even more brutal.
Oh, gosh.
Because she trusted him and he used her as well. and she realized it. And this, I think her performance is so good too. In the moment where he says to her after the knife fight with Feyd-Rautha, he says to her, "I want you to know that like I'll never stop loving you," or something like that, right?
Before
like I'll love you till my dying breath, or something.
Yeah.
And then he goes and announces his intention to marry Irulan, and her face reaction to when she hears that. Because I've also felt that kind of devastation from someone I loved before, right?
Yeah.
Where you just like the level of betrayal is just perfectly captured in her facial reaction to that.
She doesn't need to say words.
There's enormous pain and disgust and just horror, kind of all embodied in like one fluid sort of visceral reaction. And you just feel so much for her. And she watched this man who she really, really deeply loved, almost like that, turn into everything that she despised about the prophecies and about this Bene Gesserit planted religion that wasn't really their culture.
Right.
And he just embodied everything she hated in all of that. And it seemed to have turned so quickly on her, and you just feel terrible for her. And I really like that he used her as the POV for the audience to see this correctly. Right? I just think it was a brilliant choice.
All right. Well,
anyway, it's a great movie.
Oh, it is.
I really, really like it. One of my favorite films ever. And you know, a lot of people, like my wife included, sometimes, because we just watched Shogun, the FX series based on the novel.
Oh, cool.
And
you read that book too, right?
Yeah, it's great, and the show is really, really good. I totally recommend it. Talk about synchronicity though, and using people's belief against them.
Oh, geez, gosh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, really, really good. Also, sort of tangentially, and all of these things we're kind of talking about around about the same time.
Yeah.
Got to the end of that, she was very, very into it, and just very much like invested in it. But by the end of it, it's not a happy show. It's a heavy, heavy ending.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me, do you really like this?
Don't you want to have fun?
and my response was basically like, why are tragedies so popular?
Right. They have been for a long time.
Because cautionary tales are just as valuable in this range of emotions that Genova Chen talked about for Journey.
For Journey.
You shouldn't be eating
bread alone. That's it.
You should not be eating things that only make you feel good.
Right.
And that lead to the happy ending. They lived happily ever after and everything turned out great. That's one part of a diet of media. A healthy, balanced diet of media includes stories like Dune and Shogun.
There you go, yeah.
That don't leave you feeling good afterwards, but that teach you a very vital principle.
Yeah.
That help you reflect on something that you might not have remembered or even have been aware that you were doing. That is, well, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And you need to correct that. You need to really correct that in any way that you can. Call those people up. Vow to be conscious of this moving forward. Whatever you need to do, you need to know that thing.
Right.
And for that reason, this is one of the most powerful cinematic experiences I've ever had in my life. And I am very thankful to all the people who participated in bringing that out and calling me out in a certain way. And anyway, hopefully any of this is making sense, but I'm very, 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 very happy with the way that these pair of films came out. And I'm looking forward to whatever he decides to do with Messiah, which I'm still baffled as to how he will even approach it.
He has an open blank check. He can do whatever he wants with it.
How he left off with Chani, I just don't even see how you can even get to the situation in which Dune Messiah takes place.
she's killing Paul. You're right. That'll be funny. But I'm calling it now. Chani is going to kill Paul. She is going to kill him. And then the whole story is about how she isn't.
Maybe she becomes the next.
She becomes
Messiah.
the Empress.
I'm just very curious at this point. I'm just like, man, I love the way you went with this, but like, how does that now lead into Dune Messiah? I don't get it at all. But we'll see, I guess. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate you.